Hi, Jenny.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Great.
Hey, yeah. Hello. Can people hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you. Is this Tim Cook of Apple, known as Tim Apple?
Yeah, I don't get any royalties whatsoever. So, yes. Hello, Pa.
Hello. Pa. I
Hey
had
Tim,
a
glad you
friend
can make it.
who had a cool last name of Kugel. And I went, oh, that's a cool last name. Is it Google? And she said, I drive a Ford Focus. My last name was Google. I driving the Ford Focus. I love that reply.
That's true.
Excuse me, I know I'm a little late coming on, but I noticed that when I used the last Zoom site that you, Zoom link that you sent, it tells me the site can't be reached. So I had to go back into the trash and find an old one. And that's how I happened to get on today.
Did anybody else have any difficulties logging in?
No.
I'm still trying to get off
Use
my laptop.
the,
I'm on my phone right now. If I get off my laptop, I'll close the phone link.
I used the last email you sent for the July 2nd date.
Well, I put together a presentation and I checked and I thought that the 10th was gonna come on, the 10th of the 10, and I don't know why they haven't done it. So I don't know. We'll just do the best that we can with what we have. So maybe Byron knows a story of Mona and can share that story with us. That she was the 10th. And
Mona's story, the last executed. And
yeah.
of course, immortalized by her video that was released a couple years after that. John Cameron's video.
Mhm.
And only 17. And yet she asked to be prayed, that she could pray for the others' strength. So the other 9 were executed before her. And just very, very inspiring. We were going to name our daughter Mona when she was born on the first Martin Luther King holiday. We decided to change her name to Karina to offer to honor Karina King. But yeah, very, very moving and powerful story of Mona. And if you haven't seen the video, it's very good. Hopefully we can link it up too.
I saw something that said Diane Grick left, but that must have been on my laptop. I didn't leave though, but I'll just stay on this device.
So I propose that we get started with I always hope for more people to show up, you know, but I'm happy that the people who did show up showed up. So thank you. Also, my wife is an ER person and she was called in early because of some changes to the schedule. And so at 3 p.m. I was driving her around. So that was why we didn't meet yesterday. And that was a sudden change to her schedule that unfortunately I had no control over. This is a prayer by Baha'u'llah. Glory be to thee, O King of eternity, and the maker of nations, and the fashioner of every moldering bone. I pray thee, by thy name through which thou didst call all mankind unto the horizon of thy majesty and glory, and didst guide thy servant to the court of thy grace and favors, to number me with such as have rid themselves from everything except thyself, and have set themselves toward thee, and have not been kept back by such misfortunes as were decreed by thee, from turning in the direction of thy gifts. I have laid hold, O my Lord, on the handle of thy bounty, and clung steadfastly to the hem of the robe of thy favor. Send down then upon me, out of the clouds of thy generosity, what will purge out from me the remembrance of anyone except thee, and make me able to turn unto him who is the object of the adoration of all mankind, against whom have been arrayed the stirs of sedition, who have broken thy covenant, and disbelieved in thee and in thy signs. Deny me not, O my Lord, the fragrances of thy raiment in thy days, and deprive me not of the breathings of thy revelation at the appearance of the splendors of the light of thy face. Powerful art thou to do what pleaseth thee, naught can resist thy will, nor frustrate what thou hast purposed by thy power. No God is there but thee, the Almighty, the All-Wise. Baha'u'llah. So we have been urged to display published creative content to mark the 40th anniversary of the execution of 10 Baha'i women in Shiraz, in response to an urgent call from the Baha'i international community to mark the 40th anniversary. NSA shares news of these 10 women. It's going to be captured on the hashtag #OurStoryIs1 beginning in June. The story of these 10 Baha'i women is inextricably linked to the stories of Iranian women today who continue to walk the same path by fearlessly and at great personal risk standing up for their rights. The most intensive phase will be leading up to June 18th with a global effort with 22 national Baha'i communities formally participating. The BIC, the Baha'i International Community, is urging the friends everywhere to contribute to this campaign in various ways by contributing songs or brief videos, by creating graphic arts or poetry, by writing articles and social media posts, or by hosting public events and memorials in their honor in their localities. Your contributions can then be shared on social media, particularly on Twitter and Instagram. And so I've received probably 90% of my content through those channels. As always, in any of the vital work carried out in defense of the Friends in Iran or elsewhere in the world, believers are free to state facts, but always must abstain from name-calling, calls for regime change, the taking of sides for or against any political group, or engaging in undignified exchanges or arguments on social media. If you have any questions, please contact the Office of Public Affairs. So the Baha'is of Ireland have made and released 10 short videos. I found 9 of them. I couldn't find the other one. And I'm going to go to their program and get started here. So, sorry, I read that out loud, but here's the thing is what I just mentioned. 10 Iranian Baha'i women refused to cant their faith and were summarily executed on June 18th, 1983. A global effort that I mentioned already. And so guideline 1 was free to state facts, abstain from name calling that I mentioned, abstain from taking sides. So this here is from a 14-year-old student from Chesapeake, Ohio. Her name is Tahireh Kafan. She's a friend's daughter, my wife's brother, Arash Kafan, his daughter, Tahireh Kafan. Here are the angels, and it says, a thought of hatred must be destroyed by a more powerful thought of love. Firuz Kafan is a 14-year-old student from Chesapeake, Ohio, and he wrote a poem, Given and Taken. For most of their young lives, they were given hope of a united world, with women not under men, but beside. They were given a faith to believe in. They were given a community across countries and a family around the world. They gave back to the community and children of both genders. They gave to the Baha'i faith the beautiful faith of equality. And for it, they were taken. They were taken from their homes. They were taken from their family. They were taken from the day. They were taken from their lives. They were taken to prison, to be given a cell, only to emerge, to be taken from the world. But they could not be taken from our heart and mind. They could not be taken from history. And who were they who sentenced them? Who called the order for execution? Who pulled that unjust lever? Who were they that we have forgotten, like the dust we walk on, whose names not even the wind carries? Yet nearly a half a century later, we honor these 10 women. We give tribute to them across the globe, those angels who were unjustly sentenced, who refused to deny what they believed in, who suffered for what they knew was right. They who took became a semblance of dirt, and they who gave became as bright as the sun. This is the story of 57-year-old Azat Janami Esragi, hanged with 9 other women on June 18th.
And I am from Cork, and I want to tell you about a 57-year-old woman named Izzat Janami Esragi, who was executed by hanging on June the 18th, 1983. Izzat Janami was born in 1926, married when she was 22, and had 5 children. She spent her days as a homemaker and a helper to those in need. After her husband's retirement, the family settled in Shiraz. After the 1979 Islamic Revolution, her husband's pension was stopped because he was a Baha'i. On the 29th of November 1982, Izzat Janami, her husband, and 23-year-old daughter Roya were arrested and imprisoned. After months in a cold, cramped prison cell, after countless hours of interrogation, intimidation, and constant pressure to recount her beliefs, on June 18, 1983, Izzat Janami was executed by hanging along with 9 other Baha'i women, including her daughter Roya. She was 57 years old, and after her execution, her body was not returned to her family. Her husband had been hanged 2 days earlier. This is how Izzat Janami's daughter Nahi described hearing the news.
The news that my family, all 3 of them, have been executed together was like my head had suddenly been hit with a sledgehammer. I could not eat for days. My body rejected everything and I was in total shock. But today I feel better because my family stood by their beliefs until the last moment of their lives and taught me, their children and thousands of others to never submit to tyranny and injustice, even if one has to pay with their lives. Great causes demand great sacrifices.
My name is Shauna Hamilton and I'm from Killarney, County Sligo. I want to tell you about a 46-year-old woman called Nusrat Grafani Yaldai, who was executed by hanging on the 18th of June 1983. Nusrat was a talented public speaker, though she had only received elementary education. She was born in 1937, married in 1952, and had 4 children. She was known for showing legendary hospitality to Baha'is and non-Baha'is alike. Nusrat taught children's classes and was a member of the local Baha'i administrative body. On the 23rd of October 1982, she, her husband and son were arrested and imprisoned. She was brutally tortured because she refused to give details about other Baha'is and was kept in solitary confinement for 55 days. One day, she was given 50 lashes to her back and 50 to the soles of her feet and put in a communal cell. The other prisoners were warned not to help her, but a young Muslim political prisoner named Mahvash defied them.
When the heartless guards threw her so savagely into the passageway, and I saw her dreadful injuries and looked at her sweet face, I couldn't stop myself from helping her. I announced loudly in the prison cell with 80 prisoners, some of them prison spies, I am not afraid of anyone. As a human being, it is my duty to help her. It doesn't make any difference whether she is a Baha'i or a Muslim, she is still a human being. They had tortured poor Nusrat very badly. After I changed her clothes, she fainted from the pain.
Nusrat was executed by hanging along with 9 other Baha'i women on the 18th of June 1983. Her son Bahram was executed 2 days earlier. He was only 28.
My name is Pat Murphy and I am from Ireland. I want to tell you about a 29-year-old woman called Zarin Mogami Abane, who was executed by hanging on June 18, 1983. Zarin had a degree in English literature and worked as a translator until 1981, when she was fired because she was a Baha'i. She taught Baha'i children and teenagers and helped people who had lost their homes or been displaced. Zarin also recited and wrote beautiful poetry. On 29th of November 1982, Zarin was arrested with her parents. By order of the prosecutor, each Baha'i had to recant 4 times. If they refused, they were executed, or, as the authorities put it, the divine verdict was carried out. Zarin was the second prisoner from the women's prison ward who was taken to recant. On June 13, 1983, she was summoned 4 times, each time half an hour apart, to recant. Each time Zarin wrote, "I am a Baha'i." After Zarin's death, her mother was allowed into the morgue.
I embraced her cold, icy body. I touched my cheek to her cold, delicate cheek. On behalf of all of you, I kissed the mark of the noose around her tender, gentle neck. Zarin had said to her friend in prison, "Tell everyone that no one should wear black on my behalf, nor cry loudly. Only my mother, since I know she cannot forbear, may cry a little."
Zarin Mogami Abane was executed by hanging along with 9 other Baha'i women on the 18th of June 1983.
My name is Sean Thorpe, and I'm from Dublin in Ireland. And I want to tell you about a 24-year-old woman called Samin Sabiri, who was executed by hanging on June 18, 1983. Samin was born on the 2nd of March 1959. She graduated from high school in Shiraz. After school, Samin studied at secretarial school and was then employed by an agricultural corporation. After the Islamic Revolution, she was dismissed from her job for being a Baha'i. Samin was a kind and loving person, and with her friends, she used to visit the local psychiatric hospital to see the children and help bathe the girls. She also helped her mother with tailoring. She was a member of the Baha'i Education Committee. She taught children's classes and also served as an assistant to the auxiliary board. Samin was arrested at her home in Shiraz on 24th of October 1982. She was initially held at the Sepa Detention Centre and was then transferred to the Allahabad prison. Samin faced 16 charges, ranging from being a Baha'i to her participation in organising Baha'i community activities, to being unmarried and refusing to recant.
Samin was a brave, cheerful and lovable girl. Samin always found something to laugh about. Whenever someone in prison was upset, she would joke and joke until they laughed.
Samin Sabiri was executed by hanging along with 9 other Baha'i women on the 18th of June 1983. She was 24 years old.
My name is Finn Loftus and I am from Letterkenny in County Donegal. I want to tell you about a 30-year-old woman called Tahireh Arjamandi Siavushi, who was executed by hanging on June 18, 1983. Tahireh was born in 1953. At 19, she married Jamshid Siavashi, and it was well known that they were a devoted couple. Tahireh worked as a nurse and was on the local assembly of Shiraz. On the 26th of October 1982, Jamshid was arrested and held in solitary confinement for 6 weeks and severely tortured. Tahireh was arrested a month later. In prison, Tahireh washed the other prisoners' clothes and lent them spare clothes while their clothes were drying. The women had to wear thick stockings to interrogation, but most didn't have any. Tahireh had 2 pairs, so she lent them to anyone who needed them. Once her friend Olya was suddenly called to trial, and Tahireh took off the stockings she was wearing and gave them to her. They tortured Tahireh's husband to try to force her to cooperate. She was even taken to Jamshid's interrogation room to witness the pressure on and torture of her husband.
They brought Jamshid into the room, supporting him on both sides. As soon as I laid eyes on him, I screamed. He was only skin and bones. He was like a ghost, but spiritually he was very strong. He kept comforting me, saying, "Tahireh, don't worry about me, I will live."
On June the 16th, 1983, Jamshid was executed by hanging. On June the 18th, 2 days later, Tahireh was executed by hanging along with 9 other Baha'i women. She was 30.
name is Fontaine Eagle, originally from Limerick, but now living in Galway in the west of Ireland for over 50 years. And I want to tell you about a 27-year-old woman called Shoghi Effendi, who was executed by hanging on June the 18th, 1983. Shoghi had a degree in physics and diplomas in English, German and French. On the 29th of November 1982, Shoghi was arrested. In prison, she often shared her food with fellow prisoners. She was sensitive and retiring, but was always very calm, even when being interrogated.
They made me sit on a wooden table they use when they whip people. I could hear people screaming and crying all around me. There were chains hanging from the four corners of the table, and 2 investigators wearing masks were standing in front of me. There was also a man who called himself Abdullah. He had a wire cable in his hand and was threatening to whip me. Sometimes they yelled at me, and sometimes they begged me to recant and to give them the names of the other committee members. I simply told them, I will not recant or give you any names, even if you tear me apart. Abdullah kept playing with the wire cable and threatening me. I asked as calmly as I could, on which side would you like me to lie down? Do you want to whip my back first or the soles of my feet? My composure just made them laugh.
Among the crimes of which she was found guilty were being a Baha'i, teaching children's classes, and being unmarried. Shoghi Effendi was executed by hanging, along with 9 other Baha'i women, on the 18th of June 1983.
My name is Irlai Watson and I am from Dublin. I want to tell you about a 25-year-old woman called Akhtar Sabet who was executed by hanging on June the 18th, 1983. Akhtar was born in 1958. She worked as a nurse at the children's wing of Sadi Hospital. She also taught classes for Baha'i children. Akhtar was a happy, intelligent, selfless, devoted, disciplined and committed person who lived a simple life. She came from a very poor background and had to work while still in school to help support her family. In spite of that, she qualified as a children's nurse. She loved nursing and would work at the hospital as a replacement for her colleagues who were on leave. Akhtar was arrested on the 23rd of October 1982. The crimes they accused her of included being a Baha'i, being unmarried, and teaching children's classes.
Akhtar used her medical knowledge to care for the other prisoners' health. She was kind and considerate to everyone. It didn't matter if they were murderers, prostitutes, or drug addicts. The other prisoners always invited Akhtar to their cells and appreciated her warm-hearted and gentle nature. After her arrest, the director of the hospital called the authorities and asked that she be released. They said they would only release her if she would say she was not a Baha'i. She wouldn't say that.
Akhtar Sabet was executed by hanging, along with 9 other Baha'i women, on the 18th of June, 1983.
My name is Michael Van Beck and I'm from Letterkenny, and I want to tell you about a 25-year-old woman named Shaheen Dalvad who was executed by hanging on June 18, 1983. Shaheen was born on December 25, 1957. From a young age, everybody called her Shireen, which means sweetness. She studied sociology and researched and wrote a thesis about drug addiction. Her thesis was so thorough and contained such useful insights from her interviews with addicts that it was later used by her professors when teaching their own classes. In 1979, her family moved to the United Kingdom. She remained with her grandmother to complete her degree. After graduating, she chose not to leave Iran. Shireen was arrested on the 29th of December 1982 during a Baha'i youth meeting.
On December 2nd, Shireen suffered a mock execution as part of her initial processing and interrogation. Prison authorities considered all Baha'is to be unclean. They were subjected to humiliating treatment, similar to that of atheist political prisoners. Prison wardens refused to have any physical contact with them. When they were guiding blindfolded prisoners to the interrogation room, the guards would give the prisoner one end of a folded newspaper and hold the other end to avoid contact. The authorities told Shireen's grandmother that she could be freed in exchange for a large amount of money. Her grandmother had difficulty raising the money, especially as the authorities kept increasing the sum. When Shireen's grandmother tried to present the bail to the authorities, she was told that she was too late.
Shaheen Dalvad was executed by hanging along with 9 other Baha'i women on 18th June 1983.
My name is Kev. I'm from Ennis. And I want to tell you about a 23-year-old woman called Roya Eshraghi, who was executed by hanging on June 18, 1983. The second youngest of 5 children, Roya studied veterinary science, but she was expelled from university because she was a Baha'i. On the 29th of November 1982, Roya was arrested and imprisoned along with her mother and father. Her crime? She was a Baha'i and she taught children's classes. Survivors and fellow cellmates reported that on the 2nd of December 1982, Roya was subjected to a mock execution. Those who knew her said that Roya loved playing practical jokes on her friends, even in prison, especially when everybody needed cheering up. On June 18, 1983, Roya was brought with 9 others, including her mother, for execution. She was forced to watch as the other women were hanged. When her turn came, she was urged to recant her faith. When she refused to, she was hanged. Her father had been hanged 2 days earlier. The day after her execution, her sister Rosita managed to get access to the morgue.
I only recognised Roya by what she was wearing. One of her socks had fallen down to her ankle, and her left hand was resting on her forehead like she was asleep. The blindfold they had put on each of the women before hanging them was still on her forehead. Her face was slightly swollen and purple, and the rope marks were visible on her neck. There were traces of dried blood on her hands. I kissed her face and repeated, "Thank you, sister. Thank you, sister."
The other was Mona Mahmoud Jihad. She does have her own hashtag, if you will. Here's a story sung for her behalf.
And the blue sky. Did you hear the 100,000 veils have covered the sun, and darkest clouds have blocked and blackened the blue sky. Did you hear the fate of those who educate, who even in the grave find no respite from hate? Have you seen the youth who gave their lives for truth? That girl who kissed the noose and welcomed all abuse. 100,000 suns have fallen to earth, with blasts that block the ears from hearing the new song. 100,000 veils have covered the truth. How many mothers' cries are lost in the tumult? There is no war to fight. You have no sacred right, no holy book to cite to make these wrongs seem right. One 100,000 veils.
Here's a short poem I saw.
Saffron rice, rosewater ice cream, tea infused with bergamot. We taste them still, even as they take our silver and our spoon, flowing long or tied in a bun, run in to resist. We grow crowns still, even as they take the air in our hair. Spray paint on walls, words of freedom written with chalk, we write them still, even as they take the ink from our pens. lyrics memorized, music in our hearts, twirl in the streets, we sing still, even as they poison our schoolgirls' lungs. History lessons, laws of science, lines in the poems remembered still, even as they take our books about love. Tahirih in 1852, the 10 in Shiraz in 1983, Mona, Roya, and Simin, Mahshid, Izzat, and Nosrat, Tahirih and Zareen, Akhtar and Shirin, all taken yet still sung, all a story that is one, because we are Tahirih's daughters, and the 10 of Shiraz, the countless who keep dancing, all a story that is one, this one. The tree of life is a woman who stains the whole world saffron gold. She fortunes the concrete with her roses, draws blossoms with her carpet threads. What other being knows the secret alchemy, who turns tears into anthems, toxin into oxygen, gas into gales that fan the fire which burns clear the path to Azadi? She makes elixir from bitter air, the dawn of breath.
Here's some artwork that I saw. This is Manya's story about revolution, faith, loss, and escape.
Iranian Revolution happened around 1978-79, and it was a time that there was no sense of security. There was no sense of knowing what even tomorrow will bring. I remember, even though Iran is an oil-rich nation, we were so cold because we could not obtain kerosene. Even in the most peaceful countries, when you're 12, you're going through so much changes. So there is an upheaval inside you. But at that time, Iran as a nation and our family, as a family that belonged to a religious minority in a country that was going through change, underwent the most tumultuous upheaval and changes. When I talk about the changes that were happening in Iran and the changes that was happening just in my own self, it was also very amazing time because you felt part of a history. You felt that this is a turning point in the history of the nation. So I was quite excited to be in Iran. There were, of course, fears, but there were more excitement about that I could be part of something meaningful. So at that time, even though my parents were Baha'is, I did not want to follow the religion of my parents. And as Baha'is, we don't inherit the religion of our ancestors or our parents. And my own grandparents became Baha'is themselves. So I knew that I have the right and duty to investigate the truth for myself. So the voices that were attractive to me were the voices of change by standing up for what you believe, and also not necessarily violent opposition, but expressing your opposition to what was happening. So in our school, there were many of my classmates that wanted to go on rallies, to go on protesting, and I wanted to join that. My mom was worried for my safety and sometimes would ask me not to go to school or not to go to these rallies. And I was studying about Marx and trying to figure out what is the best system for the world that brings the maximum justice to humanity, but I was not interested in investigating Baha'i faith. One time my mom wanted to go to the funeral of 2 or 3 Baha'is who had been executed. She couldn't leave me alone at home. She thought I would run out and go to these other rallies. So basically she took me to the funeral. And I was a bit puzzled. Why would anyone want to go against Baha'is? They're just such passive people. They don't do anything other than prayers. This was my thoughts, way of thinking at that age. And then when I saw just the people that had gone to this funeral, even though it was a dangerous time for anyone to attend the funeral of someone that has been executed by government, there were many people, including clergy, Muslim clergy, from the villages of the people that had been executed and people of different religious backgrounds. They were in this funeral crying. And then I found out that these people that had been killed, tortured and killed, were so loved by the people that knew them that they had taken the risk of attending the funeral, and how much they had contributed to the benefit of their neighbors and their villages. So I thought, maybe these people believed in something that I didn't understand, and maybe I should investigate, but I didn't want my parents to know I was doing that because I didn't want them to think I'm following what they believe. So in secret, I investigated Baha'i faith for myself. And then I realized it's not a passive religion. If anything, it requires the believers to develop a sense of responsibility to the time they live in, to know that they need to be anxiously concerned with the need of the time they're born into. So this concept of being anxiously concerned with the problems of the society you're born into and the time you're born into, and try to understand the principles of the root of the problems, and within the sphere that you can, to try to align yourself, your actions, your thoughts in the process of bringing civilization to a better point, which for me as a Iranian youth at that time meant certain actions, and of course in Australia it might mean different actions. But none of these actions are passive. None of the roles that Baha'is took in Iran was the role of a victimhood. Even though they were victimized, they didn't accept that role of being a victim. So that sort of empowered me. And around the age of 16, I declared that I am a Baha'i. I was a good student in Iran, probably one of the top students in my class, but by the fact that I decided I say I'm a Baha'i, I was not allowed to go to university. So when I finished year 12, I decided I want to still contribute to my country. I will stay in Iran. I will not leave. I will take up a trade. So I enrolled in hairdressing course. I wasn't a very good student, but I learned how to do hairdressing. And I was quite resigned to the fact that I will not go to university. Mona was Baha'i youth who was 6 months older than me. She was arrested for merely hosting and teaching children on Friday afternoons some spiritual education and moral education. Her arrest by itself was very amazing for me, and I'm thinking, why would anybody arrest her? She doesn't have any power. So I felt a sense of, wow, she must be somebody quite unique that they have done this. They usually wouldn't arrest people just because you have children classes. That's what I thought. So I was following her story. I was always thinking, oh, what is Mona doing now? And then I heard her father had been executed, which was very sad for me. And I was hoping that they would release Mona so Mona could attend the funeral. And I never forget that day that my dad came home and he was crying. And he said, 10 women have been executed in Shiraz. 7 of them are very young women. And then when I looked at the list, I realized Mona is one of them. And as you can appreciate in those times, news didn't travel as easily as they do now. We didn't know the story because no Baha'i was present at the time these 10 people were killed. Many years later, the driver of the bus that took these 10 women from their cells to the place that they were going to be hung, he was so moved. He came and contacted the Baha'is and told the story. And in that story is how Mona only died because she wanted to improve the lives of children. And you see the bus driver driving these women. They're covered in this black chador, which is the veil women were forced to wear. And as they are going, and he told the relatives of these 10 women that Mona was the youngest, she was 17, and she asked the executioner for one wish, that she wants to die last because she wants to pray for each of these 9 women that they pass their test, because till the last moment you have a chance of saying, I'm not a Baha'i. So she is radiant, happy, not scared, and how Mona kissed the noose and put it around her head and died. So this story that later on we heard, I mean, just imagine, I am at this stage, I'm 17, 18 when I hear this story. I am so moved. It's almost like a Hollywood movie. How can a human being rise above their absolute situation of hopelessness? So whenever I am down or whenever I feel a sense of hopelessness, I remember, because to be honest with you, whenever I studied or read the Baha'i history of the early Baha'is 100 years ago, I always thought it's too good to be true. But now that I've experienced those few years that I lived after revolution among such amazing souls, I now believe if this is true now, it must have been true then. So it gives me hope that it is not a Hollywood movie, it is actually true reality. And it just shows the immense power of a human soul that not only gives energy to Mona, but gives energy to me 40 years later. So yes, Mona's story affected me and has continued to affect me. And then things became worse for our family. And one night, the soldiers came to our house and arrested both my parents. We became homeless. My mom was in prison for a short time, only 3 weeks, but my dad was given 12-year sentence. At that time, we weren't even sure he would be given 12-year sentence or he would be executed. This was later on, his sentence was reduced 12-year first, and then after 4 years he got released. But at that moment, we thought he would die. So when my mom came out of prison, she decided for our safety and the situation that we were homeless, that the 3 oldest children's lives were safer if we escaped. So we escaped to Pakistan, and then we became a refugee. After obtaining visa for Australia, we migrated to Australia. I'm now an Australian citizen. I became a doctor. I want my vocation in life to be something meaningful and something that contributes to another human being's improvement in this world. Through all these experiences, I have completely felt the oneness of mankind and that we are one people. We have divided ourselves against the absolute truth of our oneness. But the time has come that one by one we have to remove the barriers. But I also have seen the great human suffering that these divisions and years and decades of injustice has caused humanity. I'm quite mindful of the magnitude of the change that needs to happen. But I believe it is within human power to make this change. The same way that we were once tribes and families, then we became villages and cities and then nations. Human beings are capable of making this planet one inhabitants that all of us can flourish.
What Mark Ruffalo also wrote about this 40 years ago. 10 Baha'i women made the ultimate sacrifice. The quest continues as women have taken the lead in Iran. Here's a news article. Sorry that was there. But at this point, I would just like to open it up and share stories of if you weren't a Baha'i, as I wasn't when this happened 40 years ago, when you first heard of it, if you were a Baha'i, when you first heard of it, and your personal impact. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share at this point and open this up to the floor, up to the people. Byron, you were talking about some remembrances of some stories that you heard of Mona. Could you share those perhaps with us?
Well, you know, after the revolution in '79, my wife and I were actually on pilgrimage in February, the night the Ayatollah left Paris. We had our first night on Mount Carmel, and that night there was a terrible storm that came up. It kept all of us awake, a thunderstorm. Didn't sleep very well. In the morning, we'd heard that the Shrine of the Bab had been hit by lightning and shattered the spire on the Shrine of the Bab, and the gardeners gave each of the friends a piece of that spire. And we heard that the news later that the Ayatollah had left Paris. And it was the first time that there were no Persians on pilgrimage. And of course, the revolution was televised here in the United States, and of course, the U.S. Embassy was under siege for almost 2 years. When the 10 women were executed in Shiraz, it was just unbelievable. The tears and the like how powerfully Firuz captured that spirit, that the light, the brilliance of their sacrifice left us all in the dust, and their lives are forever part of our history now. It's Michael, you've just done such an incredible job pulling together this tribute to these women. I can't thank you enough. And I know we're going to follow up with an observance here in Charleston, hopefully in May or August or July or August, and then there'll also be an ELCON in August with Charzad from Corpus Christi, Texas, who's going to share some stories also. But Michael, thank you. It's been time well spent.
Thank you, Byron. One of the things that took my breath away in doing this research is these women were educated, or they were in the process of getting an education. There were nurses, there was a researcher, it's somebody who wanted to attend, but was denied. She was ready to go to university. Obviously, Mona teaching children's classes. So also the spirit in which they lived, that they did not live they lived a powerful life. They lived a life of courage, of being out there and interacting with people, and a life of learning. In being so open with their faith, they were known as being Baha'is. And then at the end, just seeing them all just at that final months in prison, they had the choices. They had opportunities to either become full of resentment and a ball of hatred and a ball of just frustration and nihilism, or they could live a life of doing whatever they could to help others. Oh my God, you're hurt. I went to school. Let me try to help you get better. Oh my God, I have 2 of these. Let me have one for myself and share for the others. Oh my goodness, let me give both of them away. Even talking with the guards, saying, which side do you want to do? So it really brought to life that we have choices all the way up until the to the end, and their choices were bold, courageous choices. And that they in their final moments, they said, don't we lived our life and appreciate that. Don't think of this as bad as it was. Any other thoughts? I have a hand raised from Diane. Yes, Diane Grick.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. One of the things that came to my mind, and one of the reasons I really am so thankful that I was able to be present at this gathering today, is one of the reasons why I so often go to memorial services and funerals and things at funeral homes. And these may be people who are loved ones of family members or friends or what have you, is not only to provide comfort to the family, but to hear the people's life stories, to learn of their lived experiences, which might have been something I didn't know about, even if I'd known the person for years. And there is an expression in the African American community, and Jerry is probably aware of this too. As long as you call my name, I'm still here. As long as you call my name, I'm still here. And I didn't know the stories of these women until today. Mona, I did, because she inspired so much in terms of the arts, in terms of the music. And I can still hear that song, Mona and the Children, in my head. But I always wondered about the other martyrs and what they had experienced and what their lives were like and how they comforted others and how they stood up. I didn't realize that there were men that had been martyred too. But it helped me to get a tiny taste of what the experience of martyrdom, which we read about in God Passes By and in Nabil's narrative. But to get a taste of what martyrdom must be like, the sacrifice, the love, and the refusal to recant, that takes so much courage and love for the faith. And so my heart has been deeply touched by being able to be present in this gathering. And I'm sorry if I took too long to talk. I talk as long as y'all sit here, so I'm gonna stop.
One thing that we presented at Marshall University was an online course for Baha'is in Iran to get an education. It was an online, so that even now, even pre-COVID at least, I'm sure it's still now, Baha'is couldn't get into the premium universities or couldn't get a premium education. Azita was there at that meeting. I'm trying to tie her into this if she wants to say anything else, but she was involved in this group of getting a university education out to Baha'is, whether they were able to get into an Iranian university or not. And if you think even a guy, think of the dual segregation or prejudice of being an Iranian Baha'i woman in Iran, and it really gets to appreciate the value of education that they had. I remember one of the professors that you guys are sitting here going to Marshall University, it was to a room full of Marshall University students. You guys come here and you complain about this and this, about parking being too high. Here are people who can't get an education, are doing everything that they can to try to get one. So that was kind of a memorable line that the Marshall professor said as he heard our story. Jerry, you've been a Baha'i. Do you have any remembrances or any stories you would like to share with us?
You missed the part where you should have said, I've been a Baha'i a long time. You didn't want to bring in the long time part. You've got to remember, I love being as old as I am. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. Yeah, I've been a Baha'i about 60 some years, and I remember knowing about Mona, but not about the other 9 women or the men who were executed a few days prior to their execution.
It was touching, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling very talkative today.
That's fine. Thank you for your input. I'm gonna go and open this up to everybody. If anybody or everybody would like to say something in remembrance or commemoration, now is your chance to speak.
I remember going to the Baha'i Youth Conference in Columbus, Ohio in 1985. And I think that was the first time they showed the Mona video to an audience. And I just bawled. I was so moved. It was just the most beautiful thing. And so I vividly remember the first time I saw that video. And that was just, I think it was in 85, or it may have been even closer to when the actual events happened, but I was, about 19 years old. Yeah, it was beautiful. The first time I saw that video, it was, like a movie sized projector, and, there were thousands of people watching it at once. It was inspiring.
Tim, thank you for joining us. Do you have any thoughts?
No, this is really touching. I didn't know the stories of all the others myself, and again, it's an eye opener. You know, you hear about the 10 women, but for the majority of them, it was their whole families, and just the amount of sacrifice is exceptional, I guess. But yeah, I don't have any stories or anything of the like though.
One
Thanks.
of my first stories of becoming a Baha'i, and I wish I could have remembered it better, but I do remember the last name Salamandari, and so I declared in 1992, and that they maybe and I went to a Baha'i, a fellow believer house, and they had a commemoration for it, and yeah, it was amazing to hear this person's life story and what they did. And so yeah, one of the unique things about the Baha'i faith is we choose to focus on the commemoration, and like Diane said, we try to get to know the people in their whole vastness of their life. Maybe they went to a country and did a pioneer for a year or two. You wouldn't have known that, but you go to their funeral and you go, oh wow, they spent a year or two pioneering, as one of my Baha'is whose commemoration I went to, I found out what mom had done. And so yeah, it's amazing to hear their life stories and just to keep them alive. Great.
I was surprised, maybe I knew at the time, to see that the women were charged for being unmarried. I thought that was odd, but I guess maybe in that culture it's not, but that was considered a crime at their age to be unmarried. Did anybody else know that?
The reason for that was the fact that Baha'i marriage was not legally recognized. Consequently, they were, by law in Iran, unmarried women living with a man.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Well,
Michael, I sent a link for that Cameron video. It's a blast from the past. If you want to share it with the friends, or we can just send it out by email.
Yeah, I'd like to have that link.
How long is this video?
Well, it was a music video, so 3 minutes or so. Let me see.
I'm wondering if we want to conclude our event with that.
I think that would be nice.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I do too.
It's entitled Mona with the Children, Byron.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
good.
about five. It's just over 5 minutes.
Great, I got it right here. I'll bring it up then. Hey, I recognize that voice. That's Carol Sedgwick. Hi, Carol.
Yes. Lurking here in the dark. Yes.
Yes,
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
I had read a great deal about the women because I read the book Olya's Story some years ago by Olya Ruhizadigan, who was in prison with them. And back about, well, I guess it's about 30 years ago, she came to this area and we set up a book signing for her at one of the local library bookstores and stuff. So at the time they were talking about making a movie of the book, but that never happened.
برادر کلک همشونو میکنی یالا آره
یالا زود باش کار داریم میخوایم بریم زود باش بجام از اول کاره
آره برادر کلک همشونو میکنی
Children, send your love to me. Send your love around the world. Our souls go dancing. With the children, you gave your life. All around the world, we'll go dancing. All around the world, we'll be free. Oh, send your love. Send your love around the world. Souls are dancing. Send your love to me. Send your love around the world. I see you dancing, so bravely dancing. Oh, Mona, send your love. Send your love around the world. We'll go dancing. Oh, Mona, send your love to me. Send your love. Send your light to me.
Magnified be thy name. Magnified be thy name, O God, the Lord of heaven. Tire my head with the crown of martyrdom, even as thou didst tire my body with the ornament of tribulation before all that dwell in thy land. Grant moreover that they whose heart yearn over thee may draw nigh unto the horizon of thy grace, above which the day star of thy beauty sheddeth its radiance. Ordain also for them what will make them rich enough to dispense with aught else except thee. Rid them of all attachments such as have repudiated thy signs. There's none other God but thee, guardian, self-existent. I'll leave it with that. Bye.